Hey, you guys. Welcome to episode 2 of Tableau and the Science of Fundraising, presented by Donorology. I'm Dave. I'm your host, and my job is to make your fundraising data useful. I'm especially predisposed to helping the Razor's Edge users. RE is a database that I am very familiar with. The Razor's Edge web platform is still very immature, and I have doubts it will be mature by the end of 2025. So I want to help. My preferred tool is Tableau, but I'll occasionally have something to say about other platforms. At any rate, all the concepts I show can be of use for any fundraising platform or CRM and pretty much any visual business intelligence program. I do apologize for the quality of video and audio. I'm still getting used to the world of video recording, podcasting, etc. I want to use the same equipment that most of you are able to use daily, so pretty much your laptops and not much else. I want to show everything very authentically and how you would be working with it as well. So that's where we're going. Okay, so what's our topic? Age demographics over the years. Common question on the Facebook Razor's Edge support group. How do I show changes in age demographics from, let's say, the present to 5, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, etc.? And what this means is getting into the guts of your data and working with a few key fields. You could do an export, and from there, you can download it. I get the question a lot, can't I'm a Tableau guy, but can't this be done with Excel? The answer is yes. Excel is still a really good tool for data analysts. It is a great tool to help you understand all sorts of things about your data that you might not otherwise be willing to. And I think there's a lot that you can do with it, but I kind of view Excel as a Swiss Army knife. It's got a whole bunch of tools in it, but you can only use one tool at a time. And then you have to fold that tool back in and open up your other tool. Tableau, on the other hand, lets you use all the tools at the same time and in a faster manner, and generally produce something that is much more visually illustrative of the point you're trying to make. I really gear most of my content towards working with Tableau, either the paid desktop version or Tableau Public. What do you need to get started here? First, you have to have good, clean data. It's helpful to have as many birth dates of your donors as possible. And I'm going to show you why that can be a problem if you don't have that. You need, of course, Tableau Public. Downloading that is a pretty easy thing to do. You have to sign up for an account, and then you're good to go with your download. You do not have to publish things to Tableau Public. You can, but I highly recommend anonymizing your data if that's the route you're going to go. Otherwise, you can just share your Tableau workbook file with anyone who needs it. For your data, you can use your flat files that come out of a Razor's Edge, rather exports, query exports. I prefer to use query exports for a number of reasons. I'll get into an aspect of data modeling uh, maybe in a future episode, but I generally find them also to be faster to download and ultimately then to work with. Query exports, but exports are fine as well. And the flat files that come out of Razor's Edge. So we're talking about CSVs or TSVs or Excel files. Those are all good, and that's all that Tableau Desktop or Tableau Public is going to work with anyway, or flat files. If you have access to a SQL copy of your database, if you use bulk data download from Blackbaud and you restore your SQL files to your own environment, that's fantastic too. But then you have to use Tableau Desktop, the paid version, to get to that. Is it expensive? Yes, it can be. It's about $75 for Tableau Desktop, the publishing tool. You can try to get a nonprofit discount, which basically gives you Tableau Desktop for free. Getting that through TechSoup is pretty common, but Tableau does limit their awarding of Tableau desktop licenses pretty much to smaller nonprofits. I think there's a cutoff of something like $5 million or less in annual revenue, and no hospitals, medical institutions, or religious institutions. You might want to check with TechSoup to verify that. But still, do I think Tableau Desktop is worth it if you can afford it anyway? Absolutely, for a number of advantages that it can give over Tableau Public. But to do a quick data analysis and a really powerful data analysis, Tableau Public is still great. So to get started, what do you need? You will certainly need your gift ID, the donor ID, the birth date, the gift date, and gift amount for every gift in the time frame you want to consider. So if you want to look at gifts currently, uh, analysis of 2024 to, let's say, 10 years earlier, 2014, then you need every gift from 2014 and 2024. It's probably easiest just to export all gifts from that time range, though, and I'm going to show you a few cool things you can do by looking at all gifts in that time range. This is probably going to be a gift query and export, and that will generally make it easier to get what you need in the format that you need. And again, I prefer to use query export over export, but it really is your choice. Okay, let's go ahead and get started then. If you download your export, you go ahead and launch it into Excel. It's going to look like this, typical. Again, there's a few things you need. Absolutely. You need a gift date, you need a gift ID, you need a constituent ID, and a birth date. That's all you really need for this analysis. You can throw in things like gift amount, maybe sex or gender, a few other things to help flesh out your analysis, but it's not required. Let's go ahead and drag our data into Tableau Public and see what we have. All of our columns are here in our quick little analysis pane, and that all looks good. So let's go to sheet one. And let's start with a few things we're going to need. So we have birth date, but this doesn't help tell us how old someone is. We can calculate how old someone is from the birth date, however. So what we need is an age calculation. Now, one thing I recommend is to maintain a little library, these snippets, just in case. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and copy this, and then I'm going to build the calculation and explain what it's doing. This one is pretty self-explanatory, though. Okay, this takes the birth date and basically subtracts, or basically takes the birth date and takes today's date, and it does the math to tell you what the result is. It's a little bit more complicated in the calculation, but that's what's happening. One thing to keep in mind, sometimes the date that exports from your system, it might give a different word from this, a different set of words for the term. It might be DOB for date of birth, birth date might be one word, whatever. So what you'll have to do is replace these instances of birth date to account for that, okay? And if you are on a Mac, you can take a screenshot of this and you can just copy and paste this calculation. You don't even need to retype it. If you're on a Windows computer, I'm going to assume there's something similar. The people at Redmond are pretty darn good at copying from the people of Cupertino and vice versa. So likely there's a way to do this without having to recopy everything. Okay, so let's go ahead and click OK. And now let's take a look at what we have. So I'm going to take my gift date, I'm going to take it to rows, and it's already, you'll note, aggregated at the year. This is what I want right now. Sometimes some analysis is not at the year level, and you can always change that by selecting other levels of aggregation. But we're not going to do that right now. Then we have our gift amount, or excuse me, our number of constituents, which I'm going to go ahead and drag onto text. And you'll know it's going to give me all of the constituent IDs for all of these years of giving. Really don't want that. What I want is a count of my constituent IDs. So I'm going to go down to my measure caret here, and instead of the default, I'm going to switch this to count distinct. Okay, and now you see things starting to take shape. Here is a count of all of my donor IDs for each year of the gift. Okay, let's now go ahead and drag age. By the way, I want this to be a dimension and not a measure, so I'm going to click and drag it up top. And I'm going to put that on columns, and you'll immediately see it goes ahead and it categorizes across this dimension. So it starts for every age as it's calculated for today. It goes ahead and populates that for each year of gift. You'll notice this underscores the importance of maintaining good data. I have some people whose age is reporting as -6, -5, -4, -3, -2, -1. This is a good way of saying, hey, you've got to, work with your data to make sure it's clean before throwing it into analysis. And clearly, my team and I've got a little bit of work to do this if this was a real nonprofit. Also, I've got a bunch of nulls. That is, these are donors who do not have an age because they don't have a birth date. And you don't really want that in your analysis. You don't want the nulls. So if you have the ability to do some sort of birth date append or birth date investigation to gather birth dates from your donors, that's an important conversation to have. Some donors, they may simply not want to disclose that, but it is important in making a full data analysis and accurate data analysis. So let's go ahead and what can we do about this? This is a lot to look at. Nobody wants to look at all of this, okay? What we're going to do instead is make a calculation that groups this. Can you do this differently though? Can you say, for instance, let's go into my single digits. Can you go ahead and just, maybe select some of these? Can you just select these and then group them using the grouping tool and group the members of this dimension? Yes, you can. And then you see I've got this over here, and I want to edit the alias of this to say 19 and under. Okay, and then I could do the same thing with my 20s, my 30s, my 40s, my 50s. That does work. It's time consuming. And also, every time there is a new year introduced into your analysis, you have to account for that. You've got to go add that new year in. So if I'm missing any donors who are, let's say, 91 years old, I've got to go add that in as soon as I have a 91-year-old donor. So there's another way to do this, and I'm going to go ahead and clear that. And we're going to instead make a calculated field called age brackets. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy this snippet, which I already have existing in my library of calculations. I am going to make a new calculated field called age brackets. This one is pretty simple. If age, which is our calculated field up here, is less than 20, then 19 and under. And you'll notice this is in quotes. That means it's a string. I'm not going to get an actual number. I'm going to get a string of characters. Else if, which is another way of saying or, if age is greater than 19 and age is less than 30, then 20s, and then so forth for 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and then anybody who's greater than 89, they're a 90. End. Okay, and the calculation is valid. So I'm going to click OK. And now I've got this over here in my dimensions, and I'm going to drag this up and replace it. And now I've got this neat little table where it is putting in all of my donors, the count of the IDs in these various age brackets across gifts of all of these years. But I've got a major problem, and that is my age calculation is not really dynamic. It's good for the first year, it's good for the current year, but it's off. And as we go back in time for each previous year, it's going to get more off and more off and more off. That's not really what I want. Now, if I were only going to do this for this analysis for a couple of years, like let's say the present year, 2024, compared to 2014, and I want to just keep these two values, I can do a replacement for this pretty easily with a quick calculation. So let's go ahead and do that first, because that's a very simple way of tackling this problem. If I want to know what the age was 10 years ago, I can just take age minus 10, and that's it. I want to know what the person's age was 10 years ago. Okay. So I'm going to bring that to dimensions as well. So for this, I'm going to go ahead for the analysis where I'm at right now. I'm going to go ahead and exclude 2014. I'm going to leave just 2024 because this is what I want to see. And I want to get rid of nulls for the purpose of this, but we're going to come back to this issue of nulls in just a minute. Okay, so I want to change this to a bar chart. Okay, so this is what it's going to look like if I have my age brackets with my year of 2024 and my count. This is the shape of my data, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and put in my label for each year, and that looks good. So now what I want to do is make a version of this so I can show how it looked 10 years ago. I'm going to duplicate this. Oops, wrong one. Let's delete that. Let's make a duplicate of this. And I'm going to call this tab 2024, and I'm going to call this one 2014. And I'm going to do two things. I'm going to change my filter instead of 24 to be 2014. Okay. And then I'm going to take my age brackets and I'm going to show what these age brackets looked like 10 years ago. Okay. So I'm going to make a duplicate of this. And I'm going to change this to age brackets 10 years ago. And then I'm going to go ahead and change all of this to age of 10 years. Okay, I've changed all of my references to the age field to age 10 years ago. And I'm going to click OK. And now I'm going to take my field for my calculated field for age brackets from 10 years ago, and I'm going to drag it to replace what it was for the current age brackets. Okay, so now I've got a picture of what everything looked like in 2014, and I've got a picture of what everything looks like in 2014 and 2024. Okay, now I want to see these side by side. So I'm going to create a new dashboard down here, and I'm going to drag 2014 and then my other year on top of it, 2024 and 2014. Yeah, I'm going to change that though, so it puts the 2014 up top. And now you can see side by side what this is looking like. Okay, so this is kind of interesting. On one hand, you can see I've got a few problems. This scale is showing me what it looks like 0 to 1,500 donors. This one is showing 0 to 400. So even though the bar heights look similar, you've got to realize they're not showing quite the same thing. Another particular issue here is I've got a dynamic where for each age bracket, going 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s to 60s, and then I've got a drop off from 70s and 80s. But you can see my big years of donors were in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. And now you can see that's changing a little bit. Here, I had a steep drop off into the 70s, but now my 70s are just as big a donors as my 60s and my 40s. Okay, what's this another way of saying? My age population, it's my donors are getting older. Not only did I lose a ton of donors, but my donors are getting older and they're not being replaced at the same levels they were a few years ago. Okay, so this method works pretty well if you are going to do just a couple of years. And it does get a little bit harder to work with this if you want to start showing multiple years, like you want to analyze this at every year. There is a better way of doing this. It takes a little bit more patience, but we're going to go ahead and go there. The one thing that we can do instead of looking at just 10 years ago, because we've got this dynamic where my age field, what it's calculating is their age as of today. But I can cut to the chase if I want to calculate what their age was at the time the gift was made. And I've got all the information I need. I have their birth date and I have the gift date. So from that, I can calculate what their age was when they made their gift. Okay, and I've already got a calculation for that over here, age when gift was made. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy this into my clipboard, and I'm going to create a new calculated field, age when gift was made. Okay, and I've got a little error here, and that is because my field here doesn't actually exist birth date. I've got it called birth date over here, so I'm just going to add in the letter H, and then I am going to, you notice it pops away from the red squiggles to the orange, which means, okay, we're good to go. So, what can I do with this now? Well, I'm going to open up a new tab and I'm going to also make an adjustment between my age brackets and my age brackets of 10 years ago. I need something different to work with now. And so I'm going to go back to my snippets, and I got another calculated field called age brackets when gift was made. This is different. I've got age brackets and I've got age brackets from 10 years ago, but now I'm just going to cut to the chase. Age brackets when gift was made. And I'm going to put this in here. And you see I've got all these errors because I'm calling my field and my snippet is something different than what it was down here. So I'm going to go ahead and correct for that. This is a good way of making sure that your names for your fields match up ahead of time. Okay, so age when gift was made. Okay, and that is a way of fixing this. When you're working in your calculations field editor, there's no find and replace. That doesn't work. So you've got to do it by hand. It's a lot faster just to make sure that your fields are named properly to begin with. Oh, and I'm also going to drag this field I had previously made, age when gift was made. I need to drag that to my dimensions as well. And let's go ahead and see what we can do to make this a little faster. Let's take my age brackets. I'm going to drag this out so we can read it. Age brackets when gift was made. And then I am going to take my gift date and I'm going to drag it 2 rows. And I'm going to take my constituent ID. I'm going to drag that to text. And then I am going to change the measure to count distinct. Okay, so now I've got something completely different than what I first started out with when we were just getting started with this, okay? Now what I'm showing is an accurate count of how old people were in their teens, their 20s, their 30s, their 40s, their 50s, their 60s, 14 years ago, 13 years ago, 12 years ago, etc. And I've still got this issue of all of these nulls, and I've also still got some issues with quite possibly people can't have negative ages. I've got to go in there and fix that. So let's go ahead though for right now, and I just want to exclude my nulls. Okay, so this is what it looks like in the table. Okay, let's change this to a series of bar charts as well. And so now I'm going to flip the orientation of this. Now I've got what my dynamic looked like 10 year in 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, so forth and so on. And this is kind of illustrative. You know, I can do the same thing. I can go ahead and take my gift date and I can make a filter of years and I can show just 2014 and 2024 and I can apply that. Notice now, though, my axes are in sync. And so this is an analysis of 1500 in 2010, and the scale goes up to 1500 in 2024. And now it's a lot more painfully obvious what's taking place here. I'm going to put labels on it. By the way, this is not considered a good visual practice to have a scale and labels for your data. I'm just putting that out there to make it clear what's taking place in our calculations. I had this big buildup going up until people were in their 60s. Now I've got this kind of plateau effect going on. How can I make this look maybe a little bit more clear what's happening with my analysis? This is something that up until now, you could have done all of this in similar sorts of steps in Excel, But what I like about Tableau is how quickly you can pivot onto a different visual, a different way of looking at the data, and have it be interactive as well. Okay, so one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my year filter, and I'm going to change this back to show all of my years. Okay, this is not what I want to see, by the way, but I'm going to change my marks type from bar to line, and I'm going to get rid of the year on my viz. And you think, okay, well, how is that useful? It's not, but what I want to be able to show at this point is what this looks like in a cascading sequence of years. So I'm going to take my gift date and I'm going to drag it to color. And now I've got this spaghetti mess, and I'm going to change all of my colors to the same color. And I'm going to make them all gray. And now when I click on my beginning year, it's going to highlight just that year, and you can see the rest of them kind of fade in the back. And so now I go to 2010, 2011, 2012, on through my timeline, and you can see how my donor population is changing. And that's a pretty dramatic way of looking at how things have been evolving over the last 15 years. This makes a pretty powerful statement. And this is something that you can use data to inform someone's decision about what you have to do. If this was a real nonprofit's data, this nonprofit has major issues, and we can totally appreciate that situation. I think worldwide, the number of donors has been dropping for several years. COVID gave us a little bit of a resurgence, but the overall trend for the last several years has been downward in the number of donors. The amount of donations, the dollar value, is holding relatively steady, but that's just another way of saying fewer donors are giving the same amount. And that's why I included, for instance, the amount field in this. Could you change this to start talking about the number of years in, or the number of dollars instead of the number of donors? Yes, you can drag that into your analysis instead. This is what I love about Tableau, is just how easy it is to drag and drop and change how this is looking. Our next topic will be looking at first gift date, last gift date, and ways we can show this in a quick visual, and how it's much faster to do this than it is to rely on Razor's Edge to generate that summary data point for you, or summary data points for you, taking forever to download. And you can complete your analysis using the Tableau way before the export is even done using the summary field method. Okay, thanks for sticking with me today, and we'll see everybody next time.